we've been catapulted into this golden age. And so, I want nothing more than for us to move into a dimension, if you will, a spectrum of awareness where there is more love and light and there is more peace and harmony. There's more oneness, a greater sense of oneness where we have the empathy and we're in love with one another and only want what's best for the collective as a whole.
Welcome to the Angelic Frequency Podcast. We are your hosts, Christina Aroche
and Luisa Vélez, and today we had a very special guest, Suzanne Ross. She's a transformational guide, author of the Up Trilogy, and founder of Sedona Ascension Retreats and Transcendence Journeys. We'll take a deep dive into the world of, first off, her awakening story, but also how her journey eventually led her to start a series of amazing events and conferences, and how she's creating a lovely community around topics. So we can't wait for you to listen and hear all about our experience at her Ascension Retreat in San Diego. Let's dive in.
Hello. Hi, Suzanne. Welcome to the podcast. We're so excited to have you here, and thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks so much for having me on. It's an honor to be on your show, and I'm just so excited to dive into everything spiritual, cosmic, and ascension related.
I know. It's so amazing. What a wonderful topic. And just to give our listeners some background around how we came together today, we were at the Ascension Retreat in San Diego a few weeks ago. And it was such a transformative, life-changing experience to be there, seeing everyone on stage, everyone sharing a day of just, cosmic goodness. And we heard from angels to like anything in between, galactics. And so it was just truly such an incredible experience. So we can't wait to hear more about that, Suzanne. But for our listeners who don't have a lot of context around who you are and what you do, we love to start with just your story and your background, and for you to tell us more about who you are, your journey, and your practice.
Thank you for that. Everything really began around December of 1995 when I had a really powerful awakening experience on a mountaintop in the desert of Borrego Springs, California. And I was working and living on the East Coast as a corporate business manager and sort of living what might be perceived of as the American dream with a Porsche in the driveway and a pool out back and married to a corporate executive. But I did not find my soul being nourished by the experience. I felt very misplaced on the East Coast, having grown up in the, beach coastal towns of Southern California. But also I felt very displaced in the corporate world. It just wasn't a good fit for me, and I just didn't feel aligned. And as such, when we're not aligned with our true calling and living our authentic life, right, it starts to show up in different ways. And for me, I was having anxiety attacks. My hair was falling out in clumps. I had eczema all over my skin. And so I went to visit my parents in the desert of Southern California. And while I was there, I felt called to run to the top of this mountain behind their home. And at the top of that mountain, I just threw my arms up to the sky and I said, I am miserable in the extreme and see no way out. And in a moment, I felt like the air around me was embracing me. And there was a brilliant white light surrounding me. And a voice came out of the light and it said, can't you see you've come home? You'll stay here and heal yourself and many others. And I'll never forget those words because it dramatically altered the course of my life thereafter. I ran down the mountain filled with excitement and enthusiasm over my new life in the desert as a healer. That led to me opening a wellness center there. And my wellness center just kept growing and expanding. And I've never looked back. I've been in the field of wellness ever since. Wellness for the body initially, but wellness for the body, mind, and spirit ultimately. And over the course of the years, just got deeper and deeper and deeper into spirituality, even channeling. I'm the author of 2 books. It's a trilogy though. So the 3rd book's coming out. It's called the Up Trilogy. Wake Up, Rise Up, and Lighten Up, have, had my own podcasts, and then really got into producing events over 10 years ago in 2015. And that's a lot of what where my focus is now. Although now I live on a horse ranch in San Diego, so I'm starting to do horse healing, coaching and healing with horses.
That's incredible. Wow. I got chills. I just want to share. I got chills when you were telling that part of the story when you're up on the mountain and the flash of light and how it was surrounding you and speaking to you. And I just got full body chills when you said that part. It's just so incredible. And I really love how what it took, and I'll say all it took, because there's a lot of other things I'm sure, but for you to say yes to that and for you to be willing and surrendering, it sounds like too, how in your surrender, things unfolded and you were led into this thing and the next thing, the next thing. And just coming off of the San Diego retreat that you hosted and just really seeing, like being able to actually tangibly experience what you bring in terms of how you bring people together and to be able to plan and host these retreats. It really is so wonderful and such a gift. So I just want to say thank you for saying yes to your calling. It's so beautiful. It's wonderful.
But thank you so much for that. Yes, I do feel like events are my calling, but also just the spiritual path. So prior to the event on the mountaintop, I didn't really have spirituality in my life. Growing up, my mother worked in the corporate world and so did my father. They were well educated and we always had a lot of books in the house. My mother dipped her toe into transcendental meditation back in the day when TM was starting to become popular, probably in the 70s. But my father was more of a scientist. We didn't go to church, but on Sundays, my parents would always say, nature is our church, and we're going to go spend the day appreciating God's creation. So that was always really meaningful for me and really stuck with me. And now I love nature and wilderness, and that's my happy place. But, after this happened, I became really interested in spirituality and a higher, like force or a higher power of love, or, what was this experience that, transformed my life so dramatically? What was the source of the voice? So I started then exploring spirituality, and I call it the Hay House brand of spirituality, because initially, I started listening to books by Wayne Dyer and Marianne Williamson and Louise Hay and Ram Dass. But, that set me on a trajectory of just being, really fascinated by spirituality. And then I had a dark night of the soul in 2008 that led me to start pursuing a deeper spirituality into Buddhism. My sister was following Buddhism and she took me to a Buddhist retreat on loving kindness. And I was sold. And I just, dove in both feet to Buddhist practices and Buddhist meditation and mantras and mudras and tantra. And, that really deepened my spiritual practice to a point where I started channeling and, just really like even quantum jumping and like, finding myself shifting into different dimensions of reality and like becoming interdimensional. I know it all like started to just expand from there, but yeah.
That's so amazing to hear that. And first off, how wonderful and magical books are in that journey and just helping us, nourish ourselves with and inform our soul and bring back, I think, almost like parts of our soul and memories and remembrance that is going to help us expand in such an incredible way. And how you found that gradually through both books and Buddhism, which is also wonderful. I love it and practice it too. I wanted to ask you and wanted to take a step back and dive into the Up trilogy a little bit. And if you're able to walk as someone new to your work, may not be familiar with the books, how do we explain or map out that progression between the books and what's the framework of your teachings ultimately through the books?
Thank you for asking. So what really started to happen is I was taking these nature walks. Like I was doing seated meditation, deep meditations, like I said, where I actually started doing some channeling, like spontaneously and totally unexpectedly. And then I started going on these nature walks. And on these nature walks, I would say this, it's called the liberation prayer in Kadampa Buddhism. But, part of it is that you're imagining golden nectar flowing down from the heavens and filling your head all the way down to your toes. And so I was just doing what the prayer was saying, but I was also imagining all that. And I just didn't realize how powerful that practice was of filling your body with shimmering light as you're walking out in nature. And as I did that, I really started to feel at one with all that is. I started to realize that everything is consciousness and that everything was consciously aware, from the flowers to the plants to the trees to, communing with birds and like other animals I would encounter on my walks. And all of that was really opening me up to experiencing consciousness. And I would hear voices and have epiphanies. And so on one day, just like I heard that voice on the mountaintop, I heard this booming voice, and it literally said, quote unquote, "You're going to write a 30-day book on the evolution of consciousness." And at the time, I'm like a personal trainer and nutrition coach, and I'm going, "Oh yeah, right."
True.
Like, I'm not a writer. And then I had this gal working with me, and I told her, I heard this voice. She was spiritual because, I was in the spiritual community by then. This voice, I'm going to write a 30-day book on the evolution of consciousness. And she was like, "Whoa, that's really heavy. Like, who's going to read a 30-day book, for one? And for two, like, what is consciousness?"
Mhm.
And I'm like, "Yeah, right." So I just started meditating on it. And what started to come through for me was it's going to be 3 10-day books. And one's going to be for the mind, and one for the body, and one for the spirit. I
Mm.
started channeling group raw around this time because I was really into the Law of One series. And
Yeah.
in it, Carla Ruker channels group raw. And I started to think, if somebody else can do it, why couldn't I do it? If other people could channel, why couldn't I? And so in the beginning of the first book of the Law of One, it gives instructions as to exactly how they set up Carla Ruker to channel group raw. So I thought, well, I'll just do all that. And lo and behold, I started writing with a pencil and little squiggly lines, raw, integrate body, mind, and spirit. And that was one of the things that led me to realizing one of the books was for the mind, one for the body, one for the spirit, and it would be all integrated. And even at that time, I started offering a course at the wellness center I worked at on body, mind, and spirit, and integrating practices, and starting to teach about consciousness. And so teaching the courses at the wellness center, as well as just channeling through how this was supposed to roll out. I had a fitness center in Borrego Springs called Lighten Up, and that I knew was going to be a title of my first book, Lighten Up. And well, okay, wait a minute, was going to be the title of one of my books. And what ended up happening is my first book actually became Wake Up, my second book became Rise Up, and my third book became Lighten Up. But the
Mhm.
source of Lighten Up, which became the name of my publishing company, self-publishing. But anyways, that's just how it all sort of came through, really, with channeling and just tuning in to spirit and my own higher self and these spirit guides that were coming through, and just receiving the guidance. And when you have that guidance, the books are like automatic writing. It flows through you unquestionably. You put yourself in that state, and the book just flows out of you. And it flowed out in a sort of systematic way. The first one became a 10-day life lessons workshop. And
Mhm.
this process of karmic cause and effect analysis came through, journaling, movement, breathing practices, meditations, self exploration questionnaires, the whole thing just, flowed out. And that became my first book. And it's awakening through reflection. So it's really about reflecting upon the most transformational experiences of your life. And then with this karmic cause and effect analysis, sort of understanding what led to these transformational experiences, what the causes were, and then the effects that it had on yourself and others. And in doing so, the life lessons you were meant to learn become perfectly clear. And then as you go from transformational event one to the next through these different phases of your life, then the life lessons you came here to learn become perfectly clear. You can set your intention to master those lessons, so that then you can consciously advance toward, higher evolutional, lessons. So the idea is that you're evolving
Yeah.
through the course of the book. So it really does become a 30-day evolution of consciousness with the trilogy.
That's amazing. That is so powerful and so exciting. And I really love how it feels very like tangible and practical, where it's not just kind of like theoretical, like, here's the thing. It's like actually walking you through the process and guiding you. And 10 days doesn't feel so intimidating. It's like, I can do anything for 10 days, right? Like, I can do that. That's amazing. I love that so much. And we'll definitely have to add the links to your books in the show notes below this episode so people can go check that out. That is so fascinating. And so you're currently in the process of writing the third one, or is it already written?
Yeah, so the second one, Rise Up, is a 10-day ascension adventure. And so for Rise Up, we go to sacred sites around the world. And the reader is an adventurer. And we start out every day with our backpack on and we hike into these sacred sites. And along the way, we learn all about their cosmology, their belief systems, their spirituality, their spiritual belief systems, what the temple sites were all about and used for. And it's a remembrance for a lot of people. That one's called Awakening Through Revelation. And it becomes sort of a remembrance of, past lives, maybe at these different, sacred sites. But you also learn a lot about how creation came into being from source. And so one of the books that has meant a lot to me on my journey, I love channeled material, is the Urantia book. And it's like a 3,000 page book of channeled material, but it's very, very profound, sophisticated, advanced knowledge and wisdom. And so I quote it's a public book, so you can quote it. And so I quote that throughout just to give people like some possibilities about who we are, why we came from, where we're going, the whole big picture with all those, those biggest questions, the biggest mysteries, right? And so, yes, that's the 10-day ascension adventure. And then the third book. So I knew I wanted it to be a 10-day spiritual retreat. But I've been putting off writing it, not just because I'm busy, but because it just really, the inspiration for it, what it's really meant to be, hadn't really come to me until the San Diego Transcendence Retreat. And I'm at the retreat. And I don't even remember the moment. I think I was sitting in the audience watching a presenter on stage, and I just went, boom, that's it.
Good.
Like, it's a 10-day spiritual retreat. What have I been doing for the last 10 years, to be exact, but offer retreats? And each of these retreats that I offer has a, list of presenters who are all presenting. And I was like, 10 days, 10 retreats, 10 presenters per retreat for 100 presenters. And each of them get to write 2 to 3 pages in the book. So it becomes an anthology of sorts, but, like a, 300-ish page book, which are typically what my books are about. And so it's literally a 10-day spiritual retreat. And the cool thing is all of my books are multifaceted in the way that they're multimedia. So even my very first book, back in 2014, you could go online and you could download the meditations so that you could listen to them. And I created videos for dynamic movement therapy, which I came up with at the time. And I also had videos of breathing practices. So it's interactive with the website. And so, now that I'm going to do this Lighten Up, 10-day spiritual retreat, I have videos of all of these presenters because it's going to be presenters who have already presented at my retreats over the last 10 years, and I filmed them all.
Right.
So it'll be super like multimedia, in that way. So it's just
Really
came to
exciting.
me a few weeks ago.
That's
That's
genius. Yeah. That's so exciting. I mean, it's been years and years of having experienced the last event ourselves. Like, it's so powerful, and every speaker on that stage has something to contribute in a very different light, but it all comes together in such a beautiful way. So I can only imagine what this anthology is going to do, like bringing 10 years of fabulous speakers on stage talking about all these things. I think it's going to be wonderful. I can't wait.
Thank you.
Oh, and I'm interested. So now diving into specifically the Sedona retreat, which is kind of the original event of them all. What was your original intention when that event came to be, and the gathering, how it came together initially, and how it's evolved over the years?
Great question, because it's definitely evolved. So, my first event was actually in Pleasanton, California, when I released my first book, Wake Up, and I was working at Club Sport in Pleasanton, which is a huge wellness facility with over 5,000 members. And so that's where I started teaching these courses. I called it Lighten Up. And so I started teaching the courses there, and my book came out, sort of in sync with that. And I knew I wanted to have a book launch event, but I didn't want to be the only one up there talking about my book for a whole weekend. So I started to network with other authors and speakers and wellness practitioners. And this event came together in Pleasanton, California, and I loved it. And we filmed it. And in filming it, I started to like come up with podcasting, which led to me having a show on Voice America TV. But was all happening at the time where I got in a download in meditation that I was being called to the Red Rocks of Sedona. So, miraculously, we ended up moving there. It's in a miraculous series of events that unfolded. And so then when I got to Sedona, I knew I wanted to continue have events because I just loved hosting that first event. So I, experimented with all these different ways that you could do events. That first event was on stage with an audience, in a theater. But here I am in Sedona now, and I'm thinking, how would I do an event in Sedona? I want to get out into the Red Rocks. So I had my first event at an ashram there, and then I had it at a retreat center at the base of Cathedral Rock. And so I kept experimenting. Then we did one inside, like in some kind of center. And ultimately, I ended up realizing, okay, it can't be like all outdoors and it can't be all indoors. And, it needs to be an indoor outdoor event. And so, of course, as the years went on and I continued to have my podcasts and really network with the spiritual community and get in touch with more, bigger names of speakers and presenters and authors and speakers, then the event started to grow and grow and grow. And we went from having 75 people to 750 people at the events. But now my events are indoors at the Sedona Performing Arts Theater with a gorgeous, stage and beautiful exhibitor hall. But we host outdoor journeys. And so we have shuttle buses come pick people up and take them out into these incredible vortex sites with beautiful, breathtaking views. So they're getting out into the Red Rocks with, their favorite presenter who's, hosting that. And so they sit in the Red Rocks with William Henry or someone that, they love to follow. And it's just so magical for them. And of course, they guide meditation and tune you into the vortex. So that's how the event has really evolved and how it launched.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love hearing about the progression because I think that's such an important thing to kind of show behind the scenes, that it's not like just, okay, from the very beginning, it was this big thing, or like I had everything figured out or whatever. How it started, it sounds like, without even the intention of doing events all the time. It was just, book launch event, I'm doing this and this will be great. And then it really kind of launched you into this. Now I'm doing this for 10 years now, which is amazing. And, again, speaking for ourselves, having had the opportunity to attend the event in San Diego, I know that we both walked away feeling so much more connected and like awakened and aligned, and just like ideas and creativity and just all the things. And I'm curious to hear about what you typically hear from people in terms of the transformations they experience, or what is like a big takeaway that typically come from these events. And I'm just going to also say, side note, we cannot wait to attend the Sedona one because that sounds amazing. But yeah, what do you typically see or hear from people who attend these events?
I mean, the overall reaction is that this event has changed their life in many positive and powerful ways. And for each person, there'll be maybe a more specific way. Some particular presenter, said something that, altered their perception of reality, or, they met somebody else that was attending the event, and, they feel like they have a new soul sister or soul brother. I think that in the way that I design these events to be so immersive, you're dropped in at Sedona. It's 3 days. You're dropped in for 3 days and you're exposed to sound baths, meditations, music, and then these, presenters who are so, enlightened, and you're inspired and empowered, and you start to, creativity starts to flow, like you said, and people get epiphanies, and they'll come and they'll share their epiphany. Now they feel empowered to finally step into their true calling, and they have these ideas about how they're going to do it. And maybe they met some people, they've networked with others who now they're going to connect with to make it happen. So yeah, just it's almost like you feel like you're in such a high vibrational frequency that manifestation is just happening spontaneously. You just feel like these little sparks of light. Everyone's a little spark of light walking around and hugging each other, and it fills the room with so much love and light. That's probably the biggest reaction I get from people is, this is such a high vibe event. I feel surrounded by love. I feel bathed in light. Like, they're just on cloud nine.
Absolutely. I have that exact experience. I remember clearly like hearing from someone like Ann Tucker, and that drew our interest because I mean that's kind of the realm that we navigate, and we work with angels, and Christina being an angel channel as well. We were very curious about Ann and her work. And then that channeling from Mother of Creation, and I had tears coming down my face. I just didn't know it was so overwhelming and so wonderful. For me, I think, of course, beyond those experiences and hearing from speakers, it's the community aspect and just feeling seen in such a different light from your day to day. So we're going out from our regular life, from, corporate life or whatever that looks like for us, into this space where you're just having the weirdest, most beautiful conversations. And there's just you're not even questioning yourself in, should I say that? Are they going to understand what I'm talking about? It's just like Akashic Records this, channeling galactic groups that, and everyone's like, yeah, sure. That's the thing that we do. That's the thing that happens, and that's real and valid. And so it's just a validation from a community of like-minded individuals, and we're all on that spiritual journey together without judgment, without like a lot of things that we experience in other settings. So I felt it's just so welcoming, and just the sense of community, and you're not alone in this. And there's just so many hundreds and thousands of people out there with you on this journey. So for me, that's kind of the magical element of the event, and what made it so special. It was just walking amongst, yeah, people that are just like me, and it just felt amazing. So yeah, it's just truly something.
Music to my ears, my dear. Music to my ears. That right there is why I do what I do. For
Yes,
sure. It's the impact that it has on the souls who attend.
that's so magical. Just kind of taking a peek behind the curtain of how those events come together. How do you design the programming, and how do you decide who's going to be up on stage, and what are the topics and the things that are going to happen? Performances also. Oh my God, Omashar, it was just beautiful, and his music and how it ties it all together. So I guess there's a science behind weaving that, connecting thread of an event like this.
I feel like divine synchronicity just allows things to flow out. I mean, I follow the guidance of spirit. It's like, a YouTube will show up, or someone's name will pop up, or, like my co-host Alan, he'll mention somebody, or my sister will say, I've been watching this person, on YouTube, or, oh, I get a book in the mail, because people tend to send me their books, and it just all starts to come together. Like, I am consciously aware that I want to have a diverse group of people who are presenting on a series of topics. Now, it starts with the theme. So I'll always have a theme for the event, like the San Diego Transcendence Retreat was Bliss on the Bay. And that just popped into my head. I was sitting on the couch and I was thinking about the event, and all of a sudden I go into this zone, Bliss on the Bay, and I start writing furiously, and all of this stuff is just coming through me. And I know I have to capture it because I'm in a moment of connection where, it's flowing out of me, and that's what it's going to be. Or Sedona Ascension Retreat 2026, I was just, I go into a zone, I go into a space where I'm asking the universe, what is the theme for my next retreat? And then things start to show up. Like, I saw this vision of a heart on fire. I was like, whoa, it's supposed to be about the fire element, which fits great with Sedona. Gets the fiery red rocks, right? And then love. I mean, I knew I wanted it to be about unconditional love. And here's this heart on fire. And then I know that I wanted to open portals. Like, it really started to come through for me. The cosmic connections are super important right now because contact is near. Because sometimes I'll shy away from because ufologists aren't necessarily spiritual. Some spiritual people are into ufology or into, UFOs and the galactics and all that. So, it's a fine line. But I met Chris Bledsoe through Alan Steinfeld, and I had listened to his book, UFO of God, on Audible. And then I felt called to this event in Virginia. I mean, just to let you know how things unfold. I attended this event in Virginia, and there's Chris and his whole family, and I get to meet him, and I'm like, I listened to your book. Anyways, he falls into place, and, a UAP researcher, Danny Sheehan, was there, who I've always wanted. I met Riz Von Burke, so it's just, yeah, it's synchronicity and it's intuition. It came through for me, opening portals with unconditional love. That's it.
It's amazing.
And then the fire element.
Yeah.
And the water element for San Diego, right? It's San Diego is water and air.
Yeah.
Sedona is fire and earth. Like, that was already coming crystal clear to me as I was going to host one in San Diego and one in Sedona during the equinoxes, always.
Right.
And I was like, it's the elements now. We've captured all 4 elements now.
It's wonderful.
Incredible.
I'm sorry, Christina, that I cut you off there.
No,
I
you're
just
not.
wanted to wrap up the idea around this with, I think it's so important for us to talk about these things because, again, we're giving someone out there that's maybe wanting to create community around them a blueprint of how following divine guidance and intuition. It can be that simple as just tuning in and seeing what comes. And you can do it too. You can create community around you no matter what you are. And we had the opportunity to record in person in San Diego. And that was a lot of our conversation around how important it is for us to create safe spaces for our communities and just create that connection with other people that are going through this ascension process, through this evolution, just to be able to normalize these conversations, to be able to just be encouraged and nourished by like-minded people. Whatever you are, it doesn't matter. You can do it too. And you can create a community and you can put together a simpler, of course, gathering to get started, but anyone can do it. And how, the divine will take over and help you if you want to make it happen.
Definitely. Thank you for that. Thank you for empowering other people. Another thing that I do as a spiritual counselor and intuitive healer on my own personal website, SuzanneRossTranscendence.com, is I am also a business coach. So, I kind of combine like spiritual counseling, intuitive reading, and business coaching. And people come to me to, talk about what they want to do, try to identify, what their calling is, what their mission is, and then give them really practical advice about how to launch your events, how to launch your calling, how to launch your healing service, how to launch your, psychic reading service, whatever, a product, whatever it may be. I give them real-time strategic advice about how to launch this and how to make it successful and how to market it plan it, organize it, coordinate it, network around it. But then I also give them the spiritual support by intuitively tuning in and maybe even connecting to their own spirit guides for spiritual guidance.
Amazing. I love this. And it just all blends so well together because, first of all, you have so much experience now to be able to just draw from your own experience and then combining that with the intuitive guidance and what's flowing through and just like the perfect blend, I feel like, of, hey, I've been through this. So here's what I've learned, but also this is what they're saying and this is how they're guiding you. And I also just wanted to add too to the conversation around how the gathering community, people together, I feel like it really amplifies the energy. That's what I felt really strongly in the San Diego is just so much of that energy and just being immersed in that world. It just felt like it amplified everything in terms of what maybe I experienced in my everyday life. It just felt like it 10x'd everything being there and connecting with these people. Just knowing that you, like Louisa was saying earlier, you can just have these conversations with people and mention galactic beings or talking to angels or whatever else, and it's just like very normal and everyone's like, yeah, that happened to me too, or and so I just really love how that all is just being brought forward, because I do also feel very strongly how having these conversations and normalizing them is so important. Like I feel like there's something here too. It's almost like when I think about, the energy that you're bringing forward with the events, it's like you're drawing the people in who are ready to ascend together and support the earth and like what the evolution is of humanity. So it's not even just, it feels like such a bigger mission than what is just events together, like, having these amazing retreats, but it also feels like a service to humanity as a whole. Like there's a bigger divine plan behind all of this, and I'm sure you felt that as well with regards to that. And so I'm also curious to hear about how it is for you just in your everyday life, like when you're not planning the events, how it is with you in terms of the channeling and the connection and how you're sensing the energies and or who the energies are, and the different guides and all of that. Like how does that look like for you in your daily life?
Thank you for asking. So when I get up in the morning, I'm an early bird. And in the morning, I feel like I'm in this floaty space. Like I kind of feel like I'm floating and I'm between being awake and aware of my surroundings, but maybe I'm still kind of in that dreamy state. But in that place, I sit and I listen. It's not with necessarily an intention. It's just what wants to come up for me today. It's not like a real focused guided meditation or anything. It's just sitting and listening and noticing what's arising for me in that moment. And it's not as many busy thoughts as would probably come up for me at noon. Because I haven't dropped into my day. I refuse to look at my phone or email or anything yet. I'm just like having my tea or what have you and just, you know, allowing the thoughts to unfold, kind of feeling into the energy in my body and just seeing what arises. Because in that space, what will come through is really spiritual in nature. It can be guidance, but it can also be messages. It could be visions. Sometimes it's epiphanies, but it kind of differs, but it's really sets the tone for the day and can sort of stay in a somewhat meditative state after that can be sustained throughout the day. One thing that led me to calling the other retreat because I do the Ascension Retreat and the other one's Transcendence, because it was a few years ago that this Transcendence kept coming up for me. Transcendence, and I was like, what do you want from me, Transcendence? And it's like to not just reach a state of transcendence during meditation, but to be able to sustain a state of transcendence throughout your day. And I think I started to do that with those walking meditations. I would sit in meditation at home and then I would take it out into nature. But then I became aware that I wanted to sustain it. So I would take it with me to the post office. I would take it with me to the grocery store. And then I would take it with me to work. I would sit in the parking lot before I went into work and I would do like a Buddhist meditation. One of them is everyone is your mother, which makes people laugh because not everyone, isn't totally in love with their mother. But, if you have the most loving mother you could ever imagine everyone is your loving mother, right? And then you walk into work that way, in that state of mind, and you're looking around and you're falling in love with everyone, and you're starting to realize I'm in the presence of all of God's children. You might be like in gridlock traffic, and rather than getting frustrated, you're thinking, how fortunate am I? I'm surrounded by all of these children of God. Right. So, I came up with these practices, and that's in my book, Wake Up, too. I've got all of these practices. It's called practical spirituality, to keep you in that place of coming into presence and being mindful and being blissful and being grateful and, all of those things. So, after all of these years of doing this, it becomes a natural state, and a natural state of transcendence, and a natural way of being, so that you're constantly, reminding yourself, I'm having an interaction with a child of God. I'm having an interaction with, an aspect of God. And so giving, that person their full attention, with compassion, respect, kindness, caring. You don't become a doormat by any stretch of the imagination. You still stand in your power and firm if you need to be. But yeah, I think that's kind of where a state that I've reached through decades of practice and determination and perseverance.
That's wonderful. And it's so useful again for our listeners and someone just trying to navigate how do I incorporate all of this into my day-to-day life, which sometimes can be a little bit overwhelming, or there's so much, as you were saying, an event like this coming together, you have a galactic this, angels that, you have Akashic records, Egypt, UFOs, like there's everything. So you open the door and it's like everything's coming at you. So how do I structure this into my life, into my day in a way that makes sense for me, for my spirituality, what I'm feeling connected and drawn to, and that I can just keep this up on my day to day and feel connected to divine, whatever that looks like for everyone. So that's very useful. And thank you so much for sharing that experience. I guess we have time for a few more questions. I wanted to ask you, going back to your book series, and what is more exciting for you up next? What is one of your all-time favorite speakers that is going to come through on your book 3 that you're feeling very excited about?
Good question, my dear. What good interviewers you both are. William Henry. William Henry is my favorite speaker of all time. And it's so funny because I kind of have a policy of I'm not going to have the same speakers back year after year, because you got to give the same returning guests a new show. And sometimes people, how come you didn't invite me back? And I'm like, it doesn't mean I don't love you, but I can't put on the same movie every year because people don't want to watch the same movie over and over again, So you got to create a new and different show with new and different speakers. But a mainstay is William Henry. It's so incredible, that he said yes to coming to an event when I was only bringing in maybe 250 people, because he's huge, right? He's Ancient Aliens and Gaia TV, and he's a best-selling author. And so I had tuned into this show that he did. I think Gaia TV featured it, but I don't know that it was produced by them originally. But it was about Ascension back 20 years ago when nobody was even talking about Ascension, right? But he was, and he was bringing it on with so much passion and conviction. And I was like, wow, I love this guy. And then, of course, he had more recent, shows about Ascension and different topics. But he's an Ascension expert by far, because he's a researcher and he's an experiencer. And so I thought, I'm just going to reach out to him. All he can do is say no, or he probably just won't get back to me. And lo and behold, I found an email address for him, and he got back to me within 48 hours. And the next thing you know, I'm on a Zoom call with William Henry. I was like, wow. And he was so humble and so soft-spoken. And I just said, wow, thank you so much for getting back to me. And he said, no, thank you for reaching out to me. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, because being in this business, You're trying to recruit big names and you get more no's than you do yeses. You get a lot of no responses whatsoever. And you just have to grow a thick skin and also know that if this person isn't getting back, it's not meant to be. You can't be offended by it or, anything. You just have to be like, okay, well, it wasn't meant to be. I'm going to move on. Sometimes I'll try 2, 3 max. 3 times and they're out, like, but sometimes people just don't see the email, right? Sometimes people don't see, right? But you can't rejection, you can't think along those lines. You just have to trust spirit, and keep persevering. But yeah, and then William Henry gets on stage and he just brings it. And, such a powerful presentation, so impassioned with practical guidance and spiritual guidance. But in person, I can tell you, he is just the most humble, kind, pure soul. I mean, he does this just out of the goodness of his heart and his love for humanity. And it's just, yeah, he touches my heart and soul. He's genuine, and he's become a friend. And I couldn't be more blessed.
Wow.
Amazing.
I love that story so much.
People have to be cool to come to my events. I know that sounds funny. I say it all the time. I don't care if you have 10 million followers. If you're not cool, you're not coming.
You're not
Yeah, that's right.
It relates so much to your story, and we experience with the podcast, of course, we experience the exact same thing all the time. And then, yeah, you grow thicker skin and all of that, but knowing and trusting that the divine is bringing through the people that need to be on your platform at any given time, and reading it through that lens, and the energy is going to take care of bringing the right people at the right time with the right message. But it's definitely something. But yeah, we've gotten the chance of talking to some amazing people like you and meet some of our personal heroes. So it's just so fun to just have a platform to bring your favorites and just have a beautiful conversation with someone you didn't imagine or that you've admired for so long. So it's just so magical.
Bless you guys for creating this podcast and persevering and trusting spirit and having faith and following your calling, all of it. Because it takes courage. I mean, I think it takes courage to wake up in the morning and face the world. It takes courage to
Totally.
step out of a mainstream type of career and just to have faith that things are going to work out in something that's not traditional, right?
Right.
Saying yes
You
to
guys.
intuition and divine guidance is not easy, for sure.
Exactly. But it's always so the most fulfilling, and it's just you couldn't imagine it any other way. It's kind of like I couldn't imagine doing anything else. Like this is, incredible. So I love this. This has been such a beautiful conversation. So Suzanne, I would love to ask you, what are you most excited for coming up, whether it's the end of the year 2025 or coming up in 2026? Obviously, we've been talking about Sedona. That's coming up in March 2026. But anything else that you've got in the works or that you're most excited for, or even just in general, whether it's related to your work and what you're bringing forward, or just in general, what you see for the world and like how we are evolving in general, like a message in terms of where we're headed as a collective.
I do believe that we are in a golden age. I do believe that there's going to be a collective ascension. I truly believe that. I mean, I'm very into some pretty advanced channeled work, and all of the channeled material that's been coming out since the 1980s, I mean, has been talking about this day and age that we're in. The Bible, the book of Revelations, talks about the end times, and it's going to be a new heaven and a new earth. Many different religions, they may have a savior son, but in any case, people are focused on being saved at the end of their days or at the end of time, right? And then these spiritual books, whether it be a Bible or whether it be a channeled work or, whatever spiritual belief system or religious belief you have, so much of it points to a rapture, an ascension, a golden age, simulation theory, the end of the game, like game over and time for a new game. The Bible will say 3.5 days of the void. Some simulation theorists will say 3 days offline. before you come online in a new game, like whatever it is, something is coming, and it's not a destination either. It's, happening right here and now. And it's not just individual, it's collective. So, we have witnessed this mass awakening that's happening globally. Where your attention goes, energy flows. We can all, focus on bringing more peace, harmony, unity, love, and light into our everyday lives and the people around us. That spreads so that now you're bringing it to, larger and larger spheres of influence, and it grows and expands. And, pretty soon you have a huge community of people who believe in an ascension, and you don't even have to be connected to them. I just, I know many religious people believe in the rapture. I mean, enough people on the planet believe this thing's happening will manifest it, if nothing else. But I do believe it's time, it's timing. It's the, cycle of the ages. We have the dark ages and the golden ages, and we've been catapulted into this golden age. And so, I want nothing more than for us to move into a dimension, if you will, a spectrum of awareness where there is more love and light, and there is more peace and harmony. There's more oneness, a greater sense of oneness, where we have the empathy and we're in love with one another and only want what's best for the collective as a whole.
That's beautiful. I
That's
think we can feel it, and we felt it at the event. It's coming. We're in it, and it's coming fast. So, yeah.
Yeah. And it's so wonderful to be able to connect with people and, thought leaders and people like yourselves who are just on this journey, and we're doing it together, and knowing that we're not alone, knowing that we've got each other, and I literally feel as though we're holding hands, and we're just walking together, holding each other's hands and guiding each other back and into that oneness. So that was so beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that. I would love to end with you sharing more about how people can connect with you, Suzanne, where they can find more information, just you, where you are online, all the things. Of course, more information about Sedona coming up in 2026, and anything else that you want to share.
Thank you for that. I invite you to visit my personal website, which is SuzanneRossTranscendence.com. There you'll find my books, downloadable meditations, my coaching as far as intuitive business coaching and spiritual counseling. Also, I'm starting to host horse retreats because I do live on a 20-acre horse ranch in San Diego, and just surrounded by all these magnificent horses, and getting certified in healing and coaching with horses. So I'm excited about offering that, and I'm calling it Om Ne. We were sitting in a horse stall, and the horses were going neigh, and I'm like, oh my God, they're oming with us.
That's so good.
Day came up for me. So anyways, yeah. And then of course my Sedona Ascension Retreat is SedonaAscensionRetreats.com. We're in early bird pricing right now, so please go to the website, check it out. Don't hesitate to ever reach out to me with any questions or inquiries, or just to say hi at SuzanneRossTranscendence.com.
Amazing. Thank you so much again. This was such an honor, such a pleasure, such a beautiful conversation, and excited to connect with you again. We will definitely be seeing you in Sedona. So can't wait.
Yay! I'm so glad you're joining us there. You guys are beautiful, sweet, loving souls. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Suzanne, for being here today. We really enjoyed the conversation. Thank you for opening the space for us. And yeah, we'd love to have you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Namaste, everyone.
Bye.